Why is banking as a service so hot right now?
Yeah, that's completely true. Every company is striving to become a fintech company.
I think the demand for instant gratification is because we live in a digital world today.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 10 of 11FS Spotlight. In this weekly show, we shine a light on some of the best and brightest in tech and financial services to try and understand what gets them going and what they think the future of the industry should look like. And I had some squares across my face, which also sometimes happens. Don't forget to give us a follow on LinkedIn so that you never miss an episode. And as you probably saw in the intro, we have just released our new documentary series about banking as a service. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode, or go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/decoding BAS, decoding BAAS, to find out more about the series. And also do get in touch, be commenting away, get involved in the comment section today, because today I am joined by Vijay Peters, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Marqeta. We're going to be talking all about banking as a service and why you might want to implement it and how it's frankly transforming the financial services landscape. So Vijay, how are you doing?
I'm well, Simon. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. As I did mention, we do have an audience watching us. So audience, if you're there, we're going to take you through banking as a service. We're going to answer some of your questions. What do you want to get understood? What do you want to learn about banking as a service? Do make sure you're asking them. But we're going to also explore a little bit about who Marqeta is, a little bit about what excites them about the space and where banking as a service is going. And then finally, we're going to bring it to life with a real case study and kind of just really drive home why there's such an exciting opportunity. So be sending those comments in, people. All right, Vijay, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
As you mentioned, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Marqeta. I lead the marketing organization, which includes everything from the top of the funnel, public relations and corporate marketing, to demand generation and product marketing, the end-to-end marketing for the company. And I've been at the company for a little over a year, and it's been a lot of fun building the marketing organization from the ground up and really helping scale that in support of Marqeta's growth.
That's an exciting space to be in at the moment, the whole banking as a service ecosystem. But do you want to just kind of put Marqeta in context of that? Marqeta's one of the more well-known names in the space.
Absolutely. The easiest way to explain what Marqeta does is, Simon, think about the card that you have in your wallet today. No different from the card that most of our listeners have in their wallet. They're pretty straightforward. They kind of check your balance and authorize the transaction based on, the country that you live in and some basic guardrails. And generally, those cards are issued by large financial institutions that have been issuing cards for a very long time. Marqeta is the first modern card issuing platform that enables any company across any industry to issue a card that's right for their customer and for their business needs. So let me give you a couple of examples to bring that to life. If you think about an on-demand delivery service like DoorDash or an Instacart, a few years ago when they may have considered starting this business, they may have empowered their gig workers with prepaid cards with cash loaded on them to go shop on behalf of yourself, say for an order. And generally what they found is that the level of fraud on those orders was significantly high. They called it the and dinner effect, which was the worker would often buy what you had ordered and potentially something for their own dinner. Tracking was impossible, and you can imagine that a company like DoorDash or Instacart could never scale if it couldn't keep fraud in check. Now, almost every on-demand delivery company in the United States uses a Marqeta-powered card. And what that does is it controls, so the card has $0 on it to start with, but is only authorized and approved when they're able to match not only where the purchase was made, what time it was made at, what location it was made at, and exactly what SKUs were purchased, and they tie that back to the order that was placed. So say exactly the olive oil, avocados, and pita bread that you may have ordered and online on your app. And so that's a level of control that was never possible before. And so what you have now is they've minimized fraud to unbelievably small levels. And they're able to onboard millions of gig workers across the country, where you could hire a gig worker all the way, say, in a remote town in Massachusetts, and instantly issue a Marqeta-powered virtual card into their mobile wallet and send them to work to fulfill an order for you. That was never possible before. Another example that I'll share. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Simon.
What struck me is it's almost like, so for a long time, informally in the community, we had people that would, for the elderly, would go shopping for them. And it was like there was a trust model. But when you're building something out bigger than that, when it's a real business and you're never going to meet these people again and they're never going to meet you, and how do you make sure that the groceries you ordered are the groceries you get, and that's all that that card is used for, strikes me as a really an interesting way to scale those businesses, as you say, and take something that was more informal and really bring it to the masses and to vulnerable people who potentially didn't have that person, or to somebody who was less able and stuck indoors in a pandemic. There are obviously these use cases that really come to life. I'm interested as well, sorry to crush you, Vijay, but I'm really interested in your story individually. Like, what led you to Marqeta? What led you to FinTech?
So I've been in the API space for many years now. Prior to Marqeta, I was the chief marketing officer at MuleSoft, and I've seen the way APIs have been able to transform use cases across industries. And so when I met Jason Gardner, the CEO of Marqeta, it blew me away what a role Marqeta's technology plays in so many of your everyday experiences without your knowledge. And so whether you're using a mobile app to order food, or you're booking travel, or filing expenses, or doing digital banking on your mobile device, or making a payment to your small business at the Square POS, chances are Marqeta is playing a role behind the scenes in how money is moving. And so it was super inspiring to see how a company came along and disrupted what was entrenched with very large financial institutions for decades, and really built something that was at the heart of some of the most disruptive companies that you hear about from the last decade, whether that's Uber or Instacart, DoorDash, Square, Cash App. And so it was super inspiring to hear that, and I knew that I wanted to be part of that growth journey with Jason.
That makes a ton of sense. I think when you can touch and feel the impact a company is having, it always makes it so much of an easier sell to potentially join them. And I do think in financial services, it's so easy to get lost on the kind of the day-to-day and the jargon and forget the customer impact this stuff really, really has, and the impact it has on people's lives. So 2020 has been a weird year. Line of the year has been year on mute. There's all of that kind of stuff that's been happening. It's been a very weird year, but it's been an interesting one for Marqeta. What really stands out to you about this year?
Sheltering in place was a shock to all of us, and how quickly and suddenly it happened. Marqeta was already growing at a very rapid pace when we all sheltered in place and went into lockdown. And there are a few things that stood out. What stood out first was that as soon as the lockdown happened, Marqeta started to play a very important role in essential services. So if you think about just basic functions such as ordering groceries becoming a risky experience in a lockdown, particularly if you're an at-risk demographic, what we start to see are not just the Gen X and the Gen Y and the Gen Zers who tend to be very amenable to new technology, but we saw very elderly senior citizens who didn't want to expose themselves to COVID, bringing out that app and downloading and using on-demand delivery services as an essential service to stay safe and stay fed. So that was the first thing we saw, is that on-demand delivery took off across demographics, and it also took off across geographies. It wasn't just something that we saw in, say, New York City or San Francisco. We started seeing the most remote parts of Pennsylvania and Kentucky and the South. And that was pretty amazing to see that this was an adoption of technology and a digital experience that wasn't just for the privileged few. The second change that we saw is the absolute surge in contactless payments. We saw that go up by 10 to 15x. And that was because when you did choose to step out and go into a retail store to make a purchase, there was no way you were sticking your fingers on that pad or touching that pen to make a signature. And you didn't want to wait any longer than you had to. So people learned very quickly about contactless payments and using their phone in order to do that because it was safer, healthier, and faster in terms of a checkout experience for them. And the third that we saw was that people started to rely less on the banking operations in the physical retail locations. So digital banking started to take off, where you saw consumers who were much more amenable to opening up their first digital banking account and doing all of their banking online and on their phone. Because again, retail locations were closed, that was no longer a benefit, and they started to see some of the upside, which is, hey, I'm actually getting really tailored loans or financing opportunities that I wouldn't because my bank is able to offer this in a more seamless digital way for me. So I think overall, just to say, overall what we're seeing is very few times do you see such a rapid adoption of technology. And we saw this across now demographics, geographies, across channels, and across different use cases. And I think that's just been amazing to see.
And I think you're in such an interesting position to see that shift, that almost a decade of kind of change happens in a matter of weeks. And that's a phenomenal shift that probably changes us forever in a really interesting way. I'm interested in, you mentioned the on-demand delivery side. Another on-demand company is Uber, and you guys are entering a global partnership. What's that about, and why do you think brands like that are trying to get financial services in front of their customers?
Uber has already been a long-standing customer of Marqeta's. So Marqeta powers Uber Eats and Postmates, which is also a part of Uber, and every Uber Eats driver is empowered with a Marqeta powered card to shop on behalf of their customers. But we signed a strategic partnership together because there are a few things that Uber was interested in doing. It had seen the benefits of using Marqeta to develop these card offerings, and they said, we are going to have more products than just Uber Eats. We're much more than a ride-sharing app. We're much more than a food delivery app. And so as they thought about new verticals and new product areas that they wanted to enter, and as they thought about new geographies that they wanted to enter, both in Europe and Asia, they wanted one unified platform to do that with. And that's where Marqeta came in. And so you'll see more interesting product announcements from Uber in the coming months, and you'll hear about where cards are playing a role. But I think they're thinking much more holistically about their customers and their other product needs that may have nothing to do with ride sharing.
All right. There's just so much more that the driver needs, that their customer needs, that sits in and around just here's a debit card. Here's a debit card with instant access to the earnings that you've just had. And here's something that really helps you with the kind of the day-to-day incidental expenses and discounts. So you can really start to think differently about the product you're offering them. There's another fintech client. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. At the heart of every one of those new products is the movement of money. Right, there's an exchange of services that happens, and you have to figure out how to make that money move seamlessly, digitally, safely, and that's where a platform like Marqeta comes in to really help Uber, which is a digitally native first company, do that.
It makes a ton of sense. We're seeing at 11FS that banking is becoming much more modular, and that banks are trying to do less of it themselves and increasingly relying on partners, but also the brands will go directly to some of those folks, and the permission that you have to do that is increasing. There's a fintech called Branch. I'd be interested in just learning a little bit more about Branch and kind of how you guys work with them. So do you want to give, on their behalf, maybe a quick intro to who Branch are and what they do, and then how Marqeta has fit into their story?
Absolutely. So Branch is a challenger bank that partners directly with employers to pay their employees digitally and immediately after each shift. So if you think about an hourly wage worker that is really tight on cash flow, they don't have the time to wait 2 weeks for their paycheck and then another 3 days for that direct deposit to hit. These are people where every dollar matters and every day matters in terms of cash flow. And Branch is really solving that pain point for them. And the way they do that is by using Marqeta to issue a Marqeta-powered card that allows instant access to their wage earnings right after their shift ends. And the second way is, imagine a worker who needs a payday loan, And traditionally, the services that were available to them were those loan sharks on the blocks that charged an enormous amount of interest or took a pretty hefty portion of their paycheck in order to make that payday advance loan. And it's really unfortunate because this is the demographic that needs every dollar the most. And so Branch is really addressing that pain point by making those payday advance loans. If their direct deposit is already tied to their card, they're able to make that in advance to their customers. So I love products like this in fintech, and particularly because they are serving the underserved in a whole new way. And there are an endless number of use cases like these. Another one that comes to mind is Upgrade. They offer very affordable credit and loans to those that may not be able to get access to them. Another one is Lydia. If you've ever traveled internationally and really cringed at those international payment fees that you've had to pay, whether you withdrew money or you made a payment on a card, Lydia aims to eliminate those. And so I think the consumer really has a lot to win with banking as a service, democratizing the access to innovation for all companies at scale.
Let's hope. I mean, we've had Revolut in the UK for quite some time that offers a similar thing. So if you're a UK listener, I guess it's quite similar. And we have seen Salary Advance in the UK do similar things. And anything that's helping around the financial inclusion side is good. But my understanding is Branch also do a lot, not just in terms of getting access to the salary early and the advance, but also helping people with budgeting, helping people switch utilities, and really think about how do they make that money go further as well once they've got it, so that they don't become reliant on that. And that's a fundamentally different position to payday lending, especially when really it's coming from your employer. From an employer's standpoint, my understanding is you're creating more engaged, more financially healthy, less stressed employees who have higher retention and higher productivity. So it's just a good thing to do, really. As a reminder, if you are watching, do please keep sending in those questions. I can see a good few coming in, and I will try and get to as many as I can. But before we move to kind of the future state stuff, Vijay, I'm interested. You guys did a report around everything happening with the pandemic, and it said apparently more than 3/4 of banks have changed their future strategy, increasing their focus on digital. I mean, we already had a big focus on digital, surely. It was all you could hear from a lot of banks under reports and quarterly announcements. What do you think the shift has really been? What do you think's really happened there? And what did you see in that report?
I think no one really expected this, but we've been talking about digital transformation for years now. It's been the biggest buzzword of the decade. And what we didn't realize is that it would take a pandemic to completely accelerate digital transformation for every company. And no industry has been hit the hardest in terms of the urgency for this than banks. When you realize that the foot traffic has completely been fallen to zero, and customers are demanding a completely new digital and personalized experience that is absolutely seamless and something that they can do from their mobile phone, it's important for them to really reinvent all of their banking services with that customer in mind. And I think there are so many things happening, because if they don't digitally transform, the digital banks are not only biting at their ankles, they're coming fast behind them to really take a large share of the wallet of each one of their customers. And so their choice is to either digitally transform or to partner with those fintechs to really continue to remain viable in the eyes of the customer.
And that's such an important thing, that the partnerships opportunity is right there. Banks used to manufacture and distribute all of the product to all of the people, and actually, does all of the manufacturing need to be done by the banks, and does all of the distribution need to be done by them? Or are they in a better place if they do some of the manufacturing and some of the distribution and leave other parts to other people, but still figure out how they grow and how they add value to the economy in that position? So it's kind of interesting that that is maturing thinking that I'm certainly seeing, and I wonder if you're seeing the same. And I wonder, as we look at the end of 2020, 21, what do you think the big trends are going to be over the next sort of 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, so to answer your question, it's absolutely about specialization. And this whole idea of a company doing everything from soup to nuts, end to end for the customer, building that from the ground up, doing it organically and doing it the best in class, is a very outdated idea. Today, it's all about bringing together the best-in-class technologies and making them work together, because the pace of innovation is too fast for one company to do it all in-house, and we've seen that. So the biggest trends that I see ahead in the next 5 years is, one, more global. A lot of the BaaS players that we're seeing right now are still very localized, very regional. And when these services have to think across borders, they're having to integrate with other platforms. And so you really have to think global first, which is think about a unified platform that can help you scale globally, so you don't have to worry about integration and stitching together disparate experiences and technologies. Second, I don't think we've seen a marketplace yet. And so coming back to this idea of you're not going to have one company have all of the best-in-class technologies in-house, we're going to see more of a marketplace where people can piece together different services, different functionalities and features from different companies to create what they need to for their customer. And so just as we have seen marketplaces in other industries, I think you're going to start to see that in BaaS. And third, I think we're going to start to see more B2B services in BaaS. I think a lot of the innovation so far has been focused on consumer products. It's been about consumer loans and financing and cards. And I think the businesses, the B2B has been largely underserved. For example, who's serving small business loans? Who is truly helping fuel the small business industry? Who's truly helping support those products for enterprises? So I think that's where we'll see the next wave of innovation.
Yeah, as we move up from consumer to micro entrepreneur and SMB up to sort of small businesses, possibly Shopify and Square have done more in that space with some of the tools and some of the lending that they've started to bring together. But what if you're not on one of those two platforms? What's the day-to-day account? And there's a really interesting challenger coming up called Hatch, which is like the bank for the 1099s or the freelancers. And though I think we will see more in the US. In the UK, we've had Coconut and Tide, and Starling has been playing that space for quite some time. So it's interesting how the different markets are seeing these things play out in a different way. And last but not least, I mean, this September, you were named #1 on the list of the top 25 women leaders in financial technology from the Financial Technology Report. Congratulations. Well done. That's awesome. What advice do you have for other female professionals who are trying to advance within the industry?
FinTech is changing so rapidly. There is no degree that you can get in FinTech. Please don't bother, because every month the landscape is changing much faster than any degree or program can keep up with. So my first advice would be to read and self-learn as much as possible. And that is in the form of blog posts, signing up for some great FinTech industry newsletters. The podcast series that you're running is fantastic. I think that there's a ton of literature out there and online that you have to go read and keep learning and building your knowledge in FinTech. The second would be to go connect with peers, not in your space, not in your industry, but in an adjacent space, because you'll start to connect the dots between how all these pieces come together. You'll start to get some of the deeper use cases and examples that you won't get from just reading a blog post. And the third I would say is start to engage in some of the FinTech conferences, because that's where you'll hear some of the latest thought leadership. You'll hear from luminaries. So my biggest advice would be learn, connect, and go be present in these live learning sessions.
I love all three of those. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts, and thank you, audience, for being with us on this show. I'm going to round us out there because I think it's going to be a tough question to follow. Thank you, Vijay. Where can people find out more about you and everything you're up to over at Marqeta?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter at Vijay_Peters.
Thank you so much. Right, that's all we got time for this week. But do not miss our other live show, Newsroom, which goes live on Tuesdays at 3:30 in GMT or 10:30 on the East Coast. And that's in Newsroom, we take a deep dive into the biggest news stories of the week every single week. Make sure you also give us a follow on LinkedIn so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, check out Decoding Banking as a Service on YouTube. The link is in the comments, which is somewhere. I never remember where I am on the video screen. And do have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks, Simon. Bye-bye.